Another patch just hit the Planetside2 servers, and this one is very tweak themed. Today I'm going to go over what has changed, and it's going to be quite rough just because I'm going off topics really, and I need to put something together quickly because I'm otherwise occupied for the rest of the weekend. So the biggest change is the air-to-air balance pass, which bundles a lot of things in, which shakes up the air game. First of all, there's the new player-friendly features, well, what I call them anyway. Engagement radar and maximum rank is now default on all Empire-specific fighters, or ESFs, and is part of the passive systems, so you still have a utility slot on top of that. Briefly, engagement radar basically spots any enemy ESFs in 600 meters unless they have the stealth module equipped, and also displays on your screen, on the edge of your screen, where that ESF is in relation to you. This has been quite a controversial change because a lot of the Sky players that are veterans don't like it because it removes a lot of the surprise factor of flying, and especially for nose gunner users that like rotary weapons, which are the high damage close quarters weapons, it's much harder now to sneak up on enemies, although with stealth module equipped you can still do that. However, it is a massive help to newer players just because the air game is hard enough already, and with the radar equipped at least you know sort of where enemy aircraft are. I mean, some of the time you can't actually see where they are if you're just looking at the screen because you've actually got to pick out the targets, but on the side of your screen and in a 3D sort of manner you know where someone's coming from behind you or trying to sneak up on you, or you're being shot at, and then you can actually react to it. And I think that's a big thing for newer players, and especially not putting them off from flying ever or making them rage quit. It's just nice to know where you're being attacked from. And I still think that flying is probably one of the hardest things, and especially to duel with nose guns, so I don't think it's a massive thing. I think that it's just a big help to newer players, and to veterans it's gonna be harder to fly in some modes, but at the end of the day it hasn't changed too much. There's also a little H symbol when you're in first person view when you're in hover mode. And this is the big elephant in the room as well, in that flying in Planetside 2 is more like VTOL based combat. It's flying backwards in a hover mode. It's not like other games where you dogfight, one gets up behind somebody and chases them down. I mean, it does happen, but against better pilots, they'll always flip into this hover mode to basically try and dodge you as much as possible whilst being able to fire at you because you're facing forwards to each other. And this H symbol will hopefully make newer players who don't really know what they're doing question, why is there a H when I'm hovering? And then maybe it'll click, or at the very least it's a very good indicator as to when you're hovering. And before, you sort of had to look in third person, and on the NC and TR variants you could see the boosters flip down so you knew you're in hover position, but on the Scythe you sort of had to guess based on the plasma on the back because there isn't the same visual aspect on the Scythe, so you didn't really know, you sort of had to guess, and you basically have to barrel forwards and throw yourself into a backwards momentum and boost away. But that hopefully is much better now. And it's not really a new player help, but they've made it so you can see more when you look in first person and look side to side on your ESF. Obviously it's the best on the Scythe, but still a bigger viewing angle just makes it easier to pick people out, especially with the engagement radar now, because you'll see where they are in relation to you, and it means that you'll be able to free look sideways to where that ESF is and turn to face them basically. Another big change to the air game is balancing the Tomcat lock-ons, one of the most hated weapons in the game, just because they did so much damage and it was almost impossible to run away from them. And now they're not really a ESF killer anymore. I mean, they still do damage, but they've essentially been made so that they have to have more hits to kill an ESF. And actually using them in game, I'd rather use my nose gun, and especially as a good pilot, than the actual Tomcats. But they've been buffed versus Galaxy's Valkyries and Liberators, the bigger vehicles, basically needing less shots to kill. But I think that alone, it's not really overpowered against these vehicles. It's still quite hard to take them down. Together and in groups, it is definitely a much bigger threat. And the Coyotes have sort of been buffed in close quarters, with their acceleration being increased, but maximum velocity decreased, and it's only slightly. And then the reload speed slightly has been increased. I think it's still in a bad place. I really don't think this is a fun weapon to play against. There's just no skill involved with it, and it's very frustrating playing against it. The problem is, and has always been, that the air game is hard. But I think all the other changes that they're making are good and are probably the necessary sacrifices that you need to make to actually get this air game sorted and able to get into as a newer player. But I just don't like the Coyotes. The nose guns have all had really slight tweaks. Basically, there's a slight buff to the rotary weapons in the close quarters nose guns, and they're basically just slightly higher magazine counts and damage slightly increased on most of them. And then we've got the Kestrel and Terrors and Locust, which are all now long range weapons with no damage degradation. So normally weapons have a minimum maximum damage. Maximum is in their preferred range, and minimum is when that's outside of that range. So this one has none of that. So it always does the same amount of damage. And the PPA and Air Hammer have been slightly nerfed, and the Banshee, the TR variant of the anti-infantry weapon, has been slightly buffed. There's also the new Afterburner variants on the ESFs. There's a high recharge, which recharges 170% faster than the stock Afterburner tanks, which seems a lot, but in practice isn't staggeringly fast. And then we have the high capacity, which is an extra 200% boost time. This is actually quite a big one for escaping engagements, as I found when I was playing it, but also a bonus in face-to-face duels. But it is quite hard to aim in slingshot duels, and it's only really going to benefit the duelists, and then after that point, you're going to be stuck waiting for your boost again. I don't think the high recharge is really overpowered, but the high capacity one definitely has quite a lot of positives going for it. These might change the air duel meta a bit, but I don't think they're massively going to shake things up. And then there's also the buff to composite armor versus ESF nose guns with 10% resistance at top level, making it a more viable choice opposed to auto repair, which everybody else normally picked. So we'll just have to see if that becomes the norm for duelists in the air. Then moving on from all of that, which is all good I think, and hopefully a bit more positive for newer players, we've got some new base objects. And this example that I'm showing off is actually really sketchy, because it's at the edge of the map, triple stacked with buildings with a garage, then the infantry tower over the core. And yeah, I think there's something needs to be done about this. Maybe about the no deployment zones around the edge of the map, and maybe something with the collision, because this base was absolutely ridiculous. It just shouldn't have happened. But anyway, this is where I'm going to show off the new towers. Well, actually, the infantry tower is pretty good looking, and definitely nice on the inside and different from a lot of the buildings we already have in the game. And it's nice to have some verticality. I really don't like one-way shields, but I do see that there's an incentive to take down the modules and the power to the base to get these down. Then we've got the ramp, which really is there just because why not? And then faction banners, a larger wall, and the big balance-wise change was a reinforcement module which allows players to redeploy across the map to a Sundra close to it, which otherwise would depend on your location and how far away you are from the Sundra. So it means that you can rush to defend a base if it's under attack, basically. There's a really nice big welcome change with a timer indicating how long you have to accept a res from a medic. So on the death screen, on the map screen after the death screen, you'll see left side of the screen. It's actually quite small, showing how much time you have. It's unfortunate that it disappears and just doesn't say unresable now, because that might be a better indicator. But it's really nice because it's just been lacking for a very long time. We've also got beautiful loading screens from Faven, and they basically show the soldiers all in sort of a rushing forwards motion, and just the close-up just makes it look really nice, and it's good quality art. The only thing with the other art, whilst I completely appreciate it as their pieces, it does show torture. And sort of like, it always gives me a weird feeling. I'm not a very squeamish person, but every time I see it, I'm like, is that the best message for the players? Watching some guy being gunned when they're defenseless, or like being put on the floor. And probably not. There's like one where he's holding it up like Darth Vader style, strangling them. And whilst they're really cool images, I don't know if I want to see it every time I'm loading. Whereas these new ones from Faven just show sort of like players and the camaraderie, and I think it hits the mark a lot better than those other images as to what you would see in a loading screen. Then we've got optics for Empire-specific pistols, which is just a nice addition, basically. I don't actually like optics on pistols that much. I quite like the iron sights for them. But it is just a welcome feature. And then also the forward grip issue in basically, and without going into the mass, which by the way Iridar covers greatly and has a lot of graphs, and it goes into quite some depth in his guide, and I'll link to that, and he's done a great job. But basically some weapons weren't better with recoil, and now that's changed, so hopefully the forward grip will always be an upgrade if it's on a weapon. One of the weapons I was aware that has been basically buffed because of this is the Pulsar C, which a lot of people are saying is a lot more fun to use now that that has happened. The Nanite System Emissary Pistol was also tweaked, with a higher base, min and max damage, but a decrease to 1.8% multiplier for headshots due to its tight fire pattern. Basically, with the way the maths work, I don't think it actually changes the damage that much if you were one of these skilled players, in quotation marks, and because you would have been hitting the head anyway, so the damage isn't too different, but basically it means that body shots and other shots that land elsewhere will do more damage. So I think this is actually really focused on trying to make it a more competitive weapon for everybody using it, and not just the best players who will get the headshots every time. But we'll just have to see how it works in game. Anyway, there's lots more little tweaks and changes, and I have missed a few of them, so if you want to check out the full update patch notes, then be sure to check the link in the description. What does everyone think of all of the new player features on the ESFs? Are they good? Are they bad? Be sure to put in the comments below, and also have a poll as always going on here. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like. If you thought it was absolutely rubbish, give it a dislike. And if you want to see more of my content, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Until next time, everybody, Joshino.